Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. This is Maria with Simplified Strategy, and welcome to our first video series of the new year of 2020. And so if you are not subscribed to this channel, please do so. And I would also love to hear a comment from you on some other topics in addition to the one today that you would like to hear about. So today I would like to jump on in and get started with our new series and explain a little bit about what we're going to be covering in this new series. I currently have it planned as a 4-week series. It's going to be all about business tax deductions. And so I know a lot of my clients have a lot of questions about what they can deduct from their taxes and what they cannot deduct from taxes. And so what I have done is taken the approach of getting to know the IRS a little bit more, getting to know the actual IRS website and looking into all of the information that they provide. And so just like with anything else, it's just taking the time to get familiar with what the tax codes really tell us. And so in this 4-part series, we're going to cover these 4 categories. The first category we're going to talk about are business expenses. So actually what business expenses that you can deduct. And so we're going to actually get there in our very last video is my plan. And the reason that we will cover that last is because it's basically going to be after we've covered the first 3 videos of some other categories of expenses that we will have. So this video is really going to focus on a particular type of business expense called the cost of goods sold. So this first video will be around the cost of goods sold. The next video we're going to be talking about something called capital expenses. The 3rd week, we're going to be talking about personal expenses. And then the last week is really going to be everything else about what those business expenses are going to be. And so we could go into other weeks of videos if the business expenses gets a little bit too long because there's a lot really to go over, but we're going to be covering pieces of that in these first 3 videos. So that is the layout. So let me jump into the first video here around the cost of goods sold and really to give, before we even go there, give you a little bit of an idea of where we are today and how we're getting to the cost of goods sold. So as a summarization, most of us are aware that every year we have to file a tax return. And so if you are a business owner, you can be any type of entity. So you could be a sole proprietor and you have a business that is just going to be part of your personal tax return. You could be set up as an S Corp or as a C Corp or as a partnership. And so basically, we won't get into all of that today, but basically it depends on how you have designated yourself to the IRS. So for example, some small businesses have set themselves up as an LLC. That's one of the most common types of business entities out there. However, that isn't a tax designation. That is a legal designation that you have set up through your state organization, through the state, the articles of organization for an LLC. So just because you might be an LLC does not mean that you are necessarily falling into some type of a tax category. So if in that example of being an LLC, you would have to then go another step further to designate yourself as either a C corporation or an S corporation, because that is really a tax designation. The LLC is more of a legal or state designation. So hopefully that wasn't confusing. But to go back, if you have any kind of side gig or side business or small business of any kind, then you have to designate yourself somehow. You could just be, again, like I mentioned, a sole proprietor, and you have your business that's running under your social security number. You could have an LLC or a partnership or corporation, and you're running that through an EIN number, for example. So there's an identification of some type that designates you as having a business. You could just own a business, or you could have a business in addition to being an employee somewhere. So regardless of what type of entity you are, we are required by the government, by the IRS, to file a tax return that really shows the government what was our income, what were our expenses, and then what the IRS refers to as the adjusted gross income, the AGI number. And so that is what many of us are hoping, that we paid too much in, and so we get a return. And so for some of you, maybe you didn't pay enough in, and you have to pay the IRS. And so that's what we're going to be discussing in this video series, are what are the tax deductions? What are the things that can help me to save money on my taxes so that I can hopefully get a return and not have to pay a lot, or at least education for yourself going into 2020 so that you can plan to have a kind of a better tax strategy than maybe you did in 2019. So let's dive into this first category. So in a nutshell, we all have business expenses. There's all types of business expenses that exist out there. Now, whether or not a business expense is deductible is another question. And so today what we're going to talk about is a specific type of business expense, and it's called the cost of goods sold. You might have heard of this term, you might not have heard of this term. So what I'll do is just explain first what are the cost of goods sold. The cost of goods sold a lot of times is referred to as COGS, C-O-G-S, which is just a short term for cost of goods sold. And so what you find a lot of businesses that are product-based businesses, inventory-based businesses are going to have a cost of goods sold. And I want to give you an example of, kind of a common experience. So you're familiar with eBay. Most of you are familiar with eBay. And so a lot of goods that are sold on eBay are sold as new items. There's a lot of stuff on eBay that are used items. But there's a lot of people that sell items. Maybe you sold yourself on eBay. A lot of those items are purchased and could potentially be resold to customers through eBay. So there's a lot of resellers that are on eBay. And it's not just eBay. It could be Amazon or other platforms that you're familiar with, like Poshmark. But in all of those cases, this would be something that would apply to those kinds of businesses, is a cost of goods sold. And so let's go into an example of a reseller. So a reseller is in the business of purchasing goods from some place, and they are either doing something to them or cleaning them or doing something, and then they're reselling those goods to make a profit. And so one of the things that comes into play is this cost of goods sold. So it's essentially, what is the cost of the goods themselves? And the cost of goods sold is a different type of business expense than just your ordinary business expense. So let's talk further about this resale business. So in a resale business, I have costs that are directly due to me providing the goods to my customer. So if I have a resale business, then I am, number one, purchasing inventory. So my inventory is part of the cost of goods sold. Another piece that I will have is that when I sell that item again, I have to ship it out. And so I have shipping costs that are a part of the cost of goods sold. I might need materials to pack those items up. So I might need bubble wrap, and I might need boxes, and I might need tape. And so all of those packaging supplies I have to take care of my inventory and my goods. So a way to think about it is this. What are the costs that I must incur in order to just provide the service that I am selling or the goods that I'm selling? And so, for example, if I have a resale business and I have someone that I am employing to 100% of the time be in the warehouse or in a storage facility, then that person's payroll, the money that I'm paying for that person is part of the cost of goods sold. Compared to maybe someone that works as an office manager or someone that handles my administration, that's more of an indirect cost. I don't necessarily have to have that office manager in order to get my goods coming into the warehouse and getting them to go out of the warehouse. But if I have a particular person that's 100% responsible for making those goods get in and out, then that individual falls under cost of goods sold. Another example of an expense that would be a cost of goods sold would be the facility itself, so the storage location. So if I'm a reseller, even if I have a room in my own house, that is a storage location that's really part of the cost of goods sold. And so for IRS purposes, what they want us to do is to divide out with all of these different business expenses, these different buckets of expenses. And so again, going back to the outline of our video series, this is just part one, the cost of goods sold. We're then going to talk about the actual capital expenses of your business in week 2. Then we're going to talk about personal expenses, because there's a ton of questions around that. What can I count all of this? I have a home office. How does that work? Do I have to pay for half of it out of my personal and half of it not? All of those things we will discuss. And then we're going to wrap it up in week 4 by talking about just the ordinary business expenses, the things that aren't the cost of goods sold, and how that is deducted. And so one last tip for you before I end the video is all of this is made so much simpler by the use of an accounting software. And I know if you've seen some of my older videos, I sound like this advertisement, and I promise I don't have some type of relationship with QuickBooks Online, but I am just telling you as an advisor and as someone that can help, is having an accounting software for your small business is going to help you immensely, because one thing that it does is it helps you to really understand the different types of expenses that you have in your business, and it will track things such as cost of goods sold for you separate than some of your ordinary business expenses. And so if you have a feeling of, wow, my business has grown, I know I probably have some type of a tax liability on my hands here, I really need to get some assistance, then I would say the best thing that you can do before you even go to to a person like a CPA or something, anyone that you work with is going to want to see your numbers. And so QuickBooks can really help you to get your numbers into the software itself, and then will allow you to continue to keep up with your numbers over the coming year in 2020. And so I have a couple of clients right now where unfortunately they just got behind, and so I'm helping them to put in all of their transactions for 2019 so that they can let that anxiousness dissolve in their minds about having a tax liability situation. And so I would just advise that if you're in that situation, definitely check out an accounting software. If you want some information from me, that is a service I provide. I do provide a QuickBooks setup service, and so it's a flat fee that I charge. I help, I get on a call with you. We do an assessment to determine what type of QuickBooks Online is going to be best for you and for your business type. And then I actually set up your QuickBooks for you and give you a quick tutorial at the end to help you know how to run the QuickBooks software. And again, give you peace of mind in knowing that everything has been captured for you in software. And so it's not really up to you to try to remember or to, again, feel like you don't know what you're responsible for doing because of this good thing of your business taking off, but also not knowing the tax implications of that. So anyway, I would love to hear your comments on this video. Let me know if you want more information around the cost of goods sold piece. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week for step 2 or week 2 with talking about capital expenses. Until then, have a great one.